Welcome to the Feargiveness Frequency. A special part of the Feargiveness Frequency is telling your story from beginning to end as someone holds space for you, getting your story out of your heart and allowing it to be freed through your voice. It's a powerful process. It's a healing process. I was honored to recently sit down with Avi Gordan, who is the founder of Life Chronicles, who records your story and captures your essence of your story as a time capsule for you to see how far you've come and your journey through life. And this also gives you the opportunity to share this with your family and friends. Come with me, meet Avi, and hear a bit of my story.
All right, so today is December 27th, 2024, Friday. And Julie, I'd like to start by asking if you can share where you're currently located and something that's been on your mind lately.
Oh, I'd love to. I live in Puyallup, Washington, which is a little town outside of Seattle, and it's kind of in the shadow of Mount Rainier. It's just a beautiful place. I've been here since I was 3 years old, and when I got married, I brought my family back, and I live on the same street that I've grew up on. And what has been on my mind lately? Just the the healing journey, the ability to that we all have to really tap into something bigger than us, and having those powwows and conversations with God and Source just daily. And it's just been so mind blowing recently of just the information that's been coming through that's really available to us all and how to really tap into it more. Just I'm kind of just getting so excited because there's so much information that's coming through right now, and balancing that between being human, having these conversations with God, but then bringing it into this reality of being a mom and being a wife, and still living with the disabilities that I have. Yeah, it's just been this beautiful daily balance of doing it all.
Mhm. So, how have you been able to tap into that more? How do you do that?
Yeah, so it started for me. I had no connection. I had denounced God when I was 13. And so in this healing journey that's happened, in the beginning, I was talking to something other than me, but I would never bring God into it. It was just a higher power. And it took about the first 2 years. This journey started in 2020. So the first 2 years, it was just a higher source. And then when I worked through my own traumas and insecurities and gone through my own trash can, I really realized that these conversations, these powwows that I get to have were with the Divine Father, Mother, and God. And once I finally released that and brought that, be able to say God and not have my inner child be like, no, we stopped talking to him, to really have these conversations. It's for me, it really it fed this daily expansion. So the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I go outside and I stand barefoot on the grass. And that's not only for me, when you are energetically grounded, inflammation can't expand. So I wake up in chronic pain. I've lived in chronic pain for 12 years. So when I go outside and I stand on the grass, and no matter if it feels like right at sunrise, no matter if it's supposed to rain for 10 days in a row, there's this break in the weather that happens right as the sun is rising. And so it's never raining. It's usually the wind, everything kind of stops. And I find this little pocket of time that I get to connect. And that's when I open my intuitive channel. I call in the Divine Father and Mother and God, and I just ask, how can I be of service to you today? How can I What do you need from me? And that really guides me and it leads me onto what I do next or how I show up in the world that day, or I just stay on the pillow. But right after that connection is when my spinal drain starts. So I have small holes and tears in my spinal column, and they're permanent, they're inoperable, and I've had them for 12 years. So my entire spinal drain will have to, my whole spinal cord will have to drain out. And that usually takes 3 to 4 hours a day. And before I would sit in pain, and now I sit in these powwows and meditate. And it is completely transmuted, alchemized, and transcended the pain. And it's a beautiful process now, but it took us a while to get here.
Hmm. What have you learned about pain?
Oh, gosh. The first 8 years were really dark. I kept striving to, 12 years ago, a box fell on my head and it crushed my cervical spine. And so after we did surgeries and we did the repair of everything, I just kept trying to get back to the life that I had before. And every time it was just a struggle. I couldn't stand for more than 4 hours a day. I've lived horizontally most of that time. And through the darkness, I would start to get these pops of color, probably about 2017, 2018. And it was like these pops of color would come through and it would show me these. I get pain pass outs that happen multiple times a day. So every up has a down. So every time I would max out on my ups, I would pass out from pain. And in those, I didn't know where I went. I would just be gone for 45 minutes, up to 12 hours sometimes. And I could only remember, I would say ouch and fuck and just be like, I was in so much pain, my physical body. And then I would just pass out and I would go somewhere. And it wasn't until 2017 that I started just to record my pain peaks. And it was just a voice recording, but it was myself telling me that you're not in pain. Your physical body is going through something, but I would literally be walking myself through it in these recordings. And it, I would wake up always saying, you have to come back. And I didn't understand why you had to come back. But as we went through this and understood pain a little bit more, when you pass out in pain, now they're called energy resets, but before it was feel literally pain. You would go to this like dark and dreary place. It was muggy, kind of gray. There was walls everywhere, but it was no pain. It was nothingness. And it's kind of that I now know that's that place you go when you're trying to disassociate, when you're numbing out with drugs or alcohol, when you're just trying to get away from the world. But the longer you stay there, you're in no pain, but your breath lowers to a very low breath. And if you don't come back, you won't come back. And that was powerful to know that you have to come back. And through pain, through these pops of color, I started to learn how to color pain. And every color holds a vibration and frequency. So as the journey started, it was I would wake up and what color, how do I feel right now? And I would see color and these pops of color just start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But they were monumental moments in that beginning before I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. That I would just lean into color and I would feel better. And then those colors brought me to my inner child and it just brought me through this whole process. But coloring pain has really been my saving grace. And I still do it every morning. I just feel whatever color I see or feel, and then I lean into it. And now each of the days of the week are colored. So we're on Friday now, which is this beautiful light blue. And I'll either wear it, drink it, surround myself with it, and just bring it in because it has healing that is happening without even me actually having to be a full participant in it.
Healing that's happening without you needing to be a full participant in it. Huh. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, how can it happen without you be like, is it a sort of letting go into the healing? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's more like when you think about color and and I didn't have color surrounding me at the beginning. I didn't have um, specific intentional colors. So when I first started, the first thing that I would see every day would be your phone screen. Usually you're checking what time it is when you get up or you turn off your alarm. And so I would color my phone screen with a beautiful picture, something that brought me joy. And then that expanded into making that there's color around me. I'm always on a pillow. So all my pillows now have color. And before they were just white pillowcases. And I wash them almost daily. So uh, I have three of them situated throughout my home, one on the couch, one in the bed, one on a chair. That way, when I'm not wearing my neck brace, I prop myself up on a pillow, and that brings in color. Um, any way that I could bring in color, because when I learned that color held a frequency and a vibration to it, each color has a healing vibration to it as
Mm,
well. So on Mondays when I'm wearing red, I am grounded. I feel connected. And that just happens to be a day in my forgiveness journey that I dig in my trash can and I'm uh, going through my ancestor, any feelings or triggers or pops of color that come up over the weekend that just wearing red or setting the intention of red, I get to connect with red and then how where that red is in my body. And so when you're not being an active participant is because you've set the intention for that color to do what it needs to do. So wearing light blue or uh, sitting within the throat chakra, those it just kind of happens with the work unintentionally, pretty much now at this point. And I drink 80% of my meals, so I get to use color in the same aspect where I'm wearing it, I'm looking at it, I'm drinking it in. You can meditate on color, you can bring any color you want. I do these Akashic Reiki hugs where I just wrap you in this color and I pull a color every day for my own healing journey. And then now I'm starting to extend that out to do that in distance healing for children and others.
mm. Yeah, it seems that you're pretty organized. Maybe maybe this isn't accurate, but like in a way, like your healing or what you need, you seem to have discovered like a system that works for you. Has that been important to have like a system so you know this is what's happening today, this is what's happening tomorrow, etc.
Yeah, when we first started, so in 2021 or 2020, it was right when the world was shutting down. My world was just opening up. And we didn't know what 2020 was going to be, but it was like February, um, the 8-year case that I was on, I got hurt at work. And so the 8-year struggle that we had been through under the umbrella of L&I and workers' compensation had finally come to a close, and a judge had given us this a full disability for it. And that was where this beautiful account, I felt like we lived in this shame and blame of the injury, and it gave accountability and responsibility to the finalization of that. So it brought us out a little bit out of the darkness, and that was that time where we got to transition our all of our care over to our team of doctors, and we had been under this very strict umbrella for so long, and it was in that transition in March where I had was in my neck brace in a wheelchair, and I just felt huge. I just felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And where I was excited for the possibilities of getting it all transferred, that meant a lot of testing, the laundry list of what we had to go through to transition everything over. I had had a heart attack in 2018, and that was kind of a near death experience for me. And that really transitioned my entire life. But when we got to 2020, I was on palliative care, and there was no succession plan off of it. It was just the decline that the doctors had said was going to happen. So whatever I could do to find comfort in that. Whew. So when we got to the doctors that day, there was so much fear into the unknown of what it was going to be like. And we didn't get great results from those tests. It was that I was losing my ability to chew and swallow, which I still am, but it's better. Um, and I was losing my voice. And that's where this like huge fear came in. And I received a pop of color that day that said, this time will be different. And so I had to like face these fears and meet with a voice specialist and a nutritionist and all of these ways to try to preserve that. And it was right when the doctors were like, they were putting up monitors in their doctors' offices and getting us ready for what they didn't even know what was going to be. And so as we got this list, it was just like, I don't know how much of these testing and CT scans and everything you're going to have to go through to get on a new palliative care program. Um, we just kind of took this list home with us. And day after day, those references that were going through for referrals, we were getting calls that they were like, we got your referral, but we were not scheduling anything out. And that came down to the pain management part of it. And that was really difficult. We had just enough pain meds to get us through 2 weeks, and we were on maximum high dosages of opiates and pain meds and patches and everything. And I just kept having this voice that said, this time will be different. And I was told to stop it all, like just let it all go. Um, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what that would look like. So we went through the 2 weeks of pain meds, and then I just tapered myself off and I stopped the pain meds. And there was no succession plan. It was either going to do and die or die trying. Um, and my family was completely against it, but I just had this like feeling like I could do this. And so we did. And it took about 6 months total of withdrawals and figuring out how to color pain. And that's really where these pops of colors started to come in. And in that journey, it became this once the clutter was cleared away, once I could see through the haze of drugs, I was still having to use alcohol for pain management. Was kind of like it lowered my blood pressure. It helped everything. So we were able to get off all of the opiates and all of the pain meds, but then we were still using alcohol for pain. And we had it down to a science. We had researched what the best, if there was a best kind of alcohol. But that was kind of getting us through. And then within 8 months of that, I got another pop of color that said, you can do this without alcohol. Like you can do this. And so I just kept following these pops of color, and every pop of color brought me to a new understanding within. It brought me to my spirit guides. At the time that I was having these higher powers speak with me, it brought me to my inner child, and she showed me my whole trash cans of traumas and insecurities and everything I was completely disassociated from. And it was within these colors that we started these jam sessions. And it was journaling out all the information that was inside, affirming all the information that we had, and then doing mirror work and meditation to ask the right questions, to get more clarity, to have conversations with our inner child. And each of those had a color to them. So it just kind of worked out that in the process of this journey, each day brought something new to it. So Mondays happened to be the day where we would journal everything out, any pops of color we had, either from the week prior or the weekend. Tuesdays, we would dig in our trash cans with our inner child. And Mondays were red, Tuesdays were orange, and we would dig in our trash can to find truth. And then we would go through the jam sessions of journaling it out, affirming it, mirror work, having the conversation with ourselves, meditation. And then it moved into we got the truth out, we got it all out. And then Wednesdays were this weightless Wednesday where we got to move that through us. So it was music or or muscle movement because our body keeps score. So we would take that color of whatever we were working on, we would find in our body where it was. There was no roadmap. There was no books. There was nothing. It was just whatever that pop of color told me to do. I surrendered. I was like, okay, we got this. And then that would bring me to muscle movement and it would show me in my body where that energy was stored. And so we would use Wednesdays for that. Tuesdays and Thursdays were always digging deeper into the trash can. But Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, they were these days of boomerang where they're called gets. Gratitude elevates truth. And so we would get grateful. And to get out of bed, we would have to get grateful. And we would go
Hmm.
through these boomerangs and just boomerang all this gratitude that we had throughout the week and what we'd learned and colors we had experienced. And it was kind of a rinse and repeat. We would just put our rainbow on repeat, and every rhythm is a repeat. So that's kind of the the guidance that we had was drink in the rainbow, bring the right colors in, and then just do these color days every day. And it's really just stuck. And that's where forgiveness came from. And forgiveness is a frequency of healing that I was gifted in that darkest time. And it was it was just this frequency that I knew would have a vibrational match at some point, but I needed to build it first. And that's where we were building this frequency with color. And the frequency is run on self love, self acceptance, self forgiveness, and gratitude. That was it. It wasn't about anyone else but us. It wasn't about forgiving anyone else but me. It was my inner child's process of healing everything that we didn't know how to heal when we were younger and learning how to upcycle that. And so that's really kind of where this every day has color. And I don't think I know that it matches with our chakra systems, but in the forgiveness frequency, there's like 13 to 18 cosmic colors that are now in it. And every time we have a new healing expansion, more goes into the frequency. And so the frequency is now a match for our current timeline that we're in, the current energy that we are. And so I've been guided strongly since August to put this frequency together in a coloring book really for others to hopefully be able to use on their own healing journeys.
Hmm. You're using the word we a lot. I'm noticing. What do you mean when you say we? Is there a team of people around? Is it different aspects of yourself?
Yeah, the we is because most of this is coming from a higher power. It's coming from a higher source. And it really changed from the me to we with the inner child, because most of this journey has been her journey that she's bringing forth. So yeah, the we is really, it's either if I'm working with my inner child, it's we, or if I'm working with the divine Father and Mother God, it's a
Hmm.
we. And so in service, I really feel like in service and surrender, um, there's so many more that are here helping this multidimensional experience that I'm having. Yeah.
Uh, all right. I'd like to rewind a bit and ask you if you can share where you were born and anything you know about your birth story.
Yeah. I was born in Okinawa, Japan. I was the third child to very young parents. My mom was 21 when she had me, and I was her third child. So she had had two boys, one of them before they moved to Okinawa, one in Okinawa, and then me. So I was the only girl, and I had two older brothers who have always been great protectors. But my dad was in the Air Force, and we lived there for the first 3 years of my life, 2.5 years of my life. When I was born with dove feet. So my feet were touching, my toes were like my feet were curved inwards. And that was found out about 3 months in. And so I had to uh, wear braces every night where my feet were locked into a brace while I slept. And then when that wasn't being as effective, then I had cast on my feet for the first 2 years of my life. And um, and going back and understanding that more with my inner child and having those conversations with my mother, I had no connection to a bath or bathtubs, and I couldn't figure out why throughout my entire life. It was just always standing water or a shower, and that it came back to that experience of not being able to be bathed for the first 2 years. That wasn't like a sponge bath or having my legs wrapped up in plastic. Um, uh, it was a very happy childhood in the beginning. We moved back here to the United States when I was 2.5 because we had a cousin that was my age that had passed away, and it was my mom's twin sister. So we had come back to the States, and she had brought my two brothers and I. And my father still had about a year left on his military. So he stayed in Japan until he was finished with his 4 years. And then he came back to the States with us. And that's when they moved to Puyallup, Washington, and built a house here and brought us on this really journey. And then my parents divorced when I was 4. And that was probably my first visual memory was during that time of the disassociation and disconnection of our family that was happening. Um, but up until then, it was just a very beautiful place. I don't remember Japan at all. I remember, pictures and stories that from my brothers that were a little bit older than me, but I've always felt this beautiful connection to Japan, which is, I've never been able to go back, but it's exciting to, in doing this work and understanding where I came from, that land had a lot to do with the development of me.
How would you describe yourself as a kid?
Who I was very loving. I loved animals. Just any type of animals. We had a small farm on our property. We had pigs and goats and chickens and rabbits. So I just loved animals. We had a bunch of cats as well. Um, yeah, I was just kind of a little caretaker. I always wanted to be a mom ever since I was little with all my dolls. I think when I was like in kindergarten, I stood up in front of the whole school and I did a talent show and I sang about being a mom, and I had all my stuffed animals and uh, all the dolls and stuff. And so, yeah, it was very beautiful until about 5 or 6 years old through my parents' divorce. And then I was sexually abused by a boyfriend of my mother's. And that really started our trash can of traumas and insecurities, for sure. And that's where we would we have this trash can, and anything that would happen to us, good, bad, or indifferent, would go in the trash can. Um, there were moments in my childhood I would crawl into the trash can, especially during those years where I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand it. I would color on the inside of my trash can. It had poetry and music, beautiful colors and art. Those are all the things that I loved. I loved to write poems ever since I was little. And I would use this trash can to hold all that stuff that I didn't know how to deal with. and it would just grow throughout the years. And I think I was about 17 where I finally closed off my childhood trash can because everything in it wasn't my fault and I didn't know how to heal it. So we just closed it off and said we would come back to it when we were old enough or ready to heal or even knew how to heal it. And then that took us 20, 30 more years to do so.
Mm. Would you like to share a little bit about your parents? What kind of parents they were in your relationship with them?
Sure. My mom became a single mom after the divorce. When my father left, he had gone back to his high school sweetheart, and um, her name is the same name as me. So there was an identity crisis that I went through in those younger years, having the same name as the woman who pretty much destroyed our family. And to know that I was named at the time of my birth in duty to her was very difficult for my younger self to handle. The relationship with my mother, she became a single mom of three in a brand new house in a city she didn't know, about an hour or so away from her family. And she did everything she could to survive during that time after coming out of a 9-year marriage, and that she had no clue up until the moment there was a knock at the door and a woman was standing there with children that um, her marriage wasn't perfect. And so we struggled as a family for those first couple of years, and then she remarried. And my stepfather, who had two daughters, was very kind. So in total, I became one of 15 children that were in the yours, mine, and ours families, that were kind of pushed around home to home. And it was very unstable, very tumultuous, the energy from home to home, the fighting that the parents were going through. So it was really probably by 11 years old, we had really lost most contact with my father. Every time we were in his care, something would happen. And it was just court battles, and it was very um, custody battles, very tough. Those probably first 10, 11 years of my life that I can remember during that. My father, I haven't had any contact with him since I was 20, or actually 22. My grandfather passed away, and that was the last time I've seen him or spoken to him. And there's been no contact either way. Going through this journey of healing, I see the youth in both of my parents having three children before my father was 22, my mom was 21. I can see their own lives. My father was adopted. And so there's so much forgiveness that's been granted. And I didn't have a relationship with my mother very much during that time since my son was born. It was very minimal. Yeah, it was really tough not having that support system. Yeah.
How about anything regarding your family history? Did you have any relationship with grandparents, or do you know anything about family history that you'd like to share?
Yeah, my grandmother and grandfather had 7 children. And then their best friends had passed away in a plane crash, and they adopted their 5 kids. So my mother's home, she was an identical twin, but she had a huge family. My grandmother was adopted, and so we didn't have much of her past until later on. But my both sides of my parents were very religious. So both sides of the family were born and raised Mormon, and which has big families. And so my grandmother and grandfather my grandfather was a school teacher and a principal, a music teacher, and my grandmother was a stay-home mom who just loved to cook, just loved her children, loved Disney movies. She had walls and walls of every Disney movie you can imagine. She loved Princess Diana. Like I remember sitting when the wedding happened, and it was the recordings, the video, the VHS tapes that she would record anything that was happening with the royal family, and we would just watch it back together. There was just so many great memories with with my mom's family. They were kind of my saving grace throughout it all, and my aunt and uncle were beautiful. Just wrapped us in a hug and took us on adventures. So yeah, just that the family aspect was beautiful. My father was adopted and he had a younger sister who was maternal to that relationship. My grandmother, who is the one who's 93 now, all my grandparents are passed away except her. And she has always been told through her religion that she received a blessing when she was, I think, 16, that told her that she and her children would live to see the second coming of Christ. And when she has just been recently gone through this health struggle and she had a pacemaker put in and she broke her hip and she's been in this recovery center, she called me and she goes, well, I guess I have to be um, what you ask for and what you're told. She goes, I'm having this conversation with God right now, and I'm kind of angry at him because I didn't want to stay till the coming of Christ if I had to do it like in a nursing home or if I had to do it in the situation she was currently in. So she's like, I told God he could just come and take me now. And we laughed about that because she was just, like this wasn't the way it was supposed to be. Wasn't the way it was supposed to, end for her. And she's doing much better now. But yeah, that side of the family, I didn't have a relationship with until my children were born. It was very distant because of the divorce and the connection, the things that had happened during that. So I was very grateful for the relationship that I have with my grandmother now. She's a beautiful soul and very misunderstood. So in my journey, but now she is a rock for me and my children, and having there's really this guiding light to the past to be able to learn more questions about my father and his upbringing, and also the things that she went through. She lived without no electricity. They didn't have cars or running water. Their Christmas trees had candles on them. And so it's interesting to see where she's come from in her journey and how it relates to the relationship that I have with my father, or non-existent relationship that I have with my father.
How about school life for you, academically, socially? What was that like?
I loved school. It was anything that had to do with music, uh, language arts, anything that had to do with poetry and writing. Um, I struggled in school with reading. In like I was held back a year because of reading. So I was always the oldest one in every grade that I was in. I was one of the oldest to graduate in that year. So I was 18 when I graduated. Um, but yeah, there was very specific moments and very specific teachers that shaped the course of my life that came out of elementary school. I remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Rawling. She taught us how to use our imagination and create a pencil and what we wanted this pencil to look like and feel like, and how it wrote. And so you got to create this pencil and draw it. And then she took all those drawings and she ordered pencils. And I don't know if she, guided us based on what was available, but she ordered all these pencils. And then every recess, we would sell pencils. So you were so in love with your pencil and you got like a box and maybe it had like 20 of them in it. And then you got to sell them to others. And that's what got me into my career in the future was just the ability to imagine something, to build something, to bring it to life, and then to give it to another, to sell it to another. It was just pretty amazing. Um, I did choir and music in all of the school, every grade that I was in. Poetry. I wrote poetry up until my son was born. I had written a lot of poetry. My trash can, uh, I was brutally assaulted when I was 11, and that the 2 years after that. So that was from going right out of elementary school into junior high is when that time happened. So my junior high years were very dark. But it was music. It was music and uh, having this beautiful friend group around me that really saved me. And that's when I lived in my trash can for those few years as well. But as I got to high school, um, the very first year I was very outgoing. I was in DECA. I was a leader in DECA and fashion merchandising. And it was those teachers of DECA and fashion merchandising that also helped me kind of shaped what my future would be like. And I would put on fashion shows for the school, just have this beautiful love of fashion and got to connect with some of the art institutes around here to be able to on these fashion shows and create this fashion line for the school and working in the student store. Those were just magical moments for me. When I was in junior high, or when I was in junior in high school, I found out that I was pregnant. And I found out that I was pregnant as I was losing the child. And it was that teen pregnancy and loss that I know I didn't want to be pregnant, right? It was a gift and a blessing, but it was uh just upended my life. Whew. And because I was so distraught, I was sent to Alaska uh because no one kind of knew what was going on. And so I don't know if it was the courts had sent me or my parents had just made that decision, but I was sent to Alaska because my father lived there and I hadn't seen him in years. And so we were sent up there just to kind of like have this reckoning and reconciliation. And when he picked me up from the airport, it was pretty dark. And on the drive home, the northern lights were above us. And I'd never seen the northern lights before. And they were just so beautiful. And I remember during that stay that every night, no matter how cold it was outside, you would just be wrapped up and you got to sit underneath the northern lights. And my inner child and I, my 17-year-old, that's when we closed off our trash can. And we told each other, we made this pact that we would come back to it when we were strong enough to heal. But at 17, it was just like we couldn't handle it anymore. And once we sealed off that trash can under the northern lights, we came back to the States. We were there for about 3 months, and we came back to the States to start my junior year of high school. Um, and so it was my sophomore year because we had just started my junior year of high school. And it was like this whole weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders coming back home after that. And I felt just this beautiful guidance. And it was a few months later that I met my husband on a blind date, my now husband. Um, and life just kind of completely changed from that moment forward, taking away all the pain of our childhood. It was a disassociation, of course, but it was in such a beautiful way that we stepped into the next season of our life just ready to take on the world. And that's really what we ended up doing.
What do you think you're a good match for each other?
Who I definitely think our childhood trauma brought us into each other. We had a lot, though we didn't know it at the time. It was a way of when we met. I don't even know how to explain it. It was just kind of like there was just this the strongest connection, and we were pretty much never apart from that moment on. But I, as I look back at now, we were both going through struggles in our own home lives and family lives that it sealed like our connection. But I don't even know how to explain it. There was just such love from the very beginning and such friendship. And we tried to, be friends and just get to know each other for a while. And um, yeah, it was just every time we would be together, it felt like we'd known each other forever. And I was still a junior in high school. And so by the end of that year, I had turned 18 and we ended up moving out together. So my senior year in high school, I had emancipated myself from my family and my religion. And my husband and I, boyfriend at the time, had got an apartment together. And so my senior year, I worked full time, went to school full time, and lived on my own, which was pretty amazing as we look at it back at it now. But yeah, it was a lot.
Do you remember being a child and envisioning what you wanted your adult life to be like?
I do. Yeah, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a mom. And so when I became a mom well, my kids give me a hard time about it now, but I was 19 when I had my son. I was like 2 weeks from 20. So they felt like that was a teen pregnancy. They give me a hard time about it. But I knew that the moment that I found out that I was pregnant, just being a mother was exactly the uh, it's all I wanted to be. And through my high school years and being in fashion and merchandising, I knew where I wanted to work, who I wanted to work for, and what I wanted to do. So all of my probably even junior high school years, I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I got out of school. And I took all the courses and classes in school that would help me in this career that I'd already pretty much mapped out for myself. But it was my husband who would push me to fill out the application and move on from the espresso stand and do what I knew that I wanted to do. And so a week out of high school, I had got the job with my dream company, um, starting this career that I had no clue where it was going to take me, but I knew that starting point is getting my foot in the door. And it was working for Nordstrom. And Nordstrom started here in Washington, in Seattle in 1901. So it had such a history for me growing up, and working with clothes and fashion. I used to dress all my friends and uh, help their moms. I would go through their closets. I really just loved anything that had to do with fashion because it was a mask really that I got to wear that could hide anything that was going on inside. You always felt better when you were dressed up or wearing something beautiful or color or put makeup on. It was just, yeah, I could see it all happening when I was younger. And then I really got to live that out in the rest of my life.
Hmm. So, becoming a mom, what was that like for you? And what type of a parent have you been?
Ooh, that's a good question. Becoming a mom, so I had my first son at 19, and our daughter came 4 years later. And so I wasn't married at the time that my son was born. We got married about 9 months later, and we already knew kind of where we wanted to get married, and that was that where the timing, everything had worked out. And so our son was very sick when he was a child, a baby. And from month 10 through probably about a year and a half, he was in and out of the hospital. And we just couldn't figure out what was wrong. And so I had wanted to be a breastfeed. I wanted to breastfeed my child. And I ended up, because he was so sick and he couldn't have anything else, it was kind of his only lifeline. He was getting sick off of everything else he ate. And he came to know that he had allergies pretty much to everything. And so I ended up getting to breastfeed him for 8 months or for 18 months, but I was also working. So there was no, um, I wasn't with the company long enough to have maternity leave. So I think I had 6 weeks with him and then I had to go back to work. And then my career really took off right after my daughter was born. And so, uh, we were very fortunate that our family was all nearby. We never had to put our son necessarily in a daycare. My mother had a daycare in her home, so that really helped. And then all of my in-laws would take care of our son. So it was just, and my husband, he would work nights. So there was always a parent with our children. Uh, but yeah, I loved it. I loved making their food. Our kitchen was full of every drawing, like every wall was filled with every drawing the kids had done. We didn't, there was no aesthetics. It was all about the kids, ABCs everywhere. Yeah, I just loved that. It was a difficult balance between career and being a mother. And when our daughter was born, within just a couple months of coming back from her, then I was placed into a position that traveled. And I was gone for 1 to 2 weeks a month, which was really difficult. But yeah, we did it. We figured it out.
Mm. What have you learned about work-life balance?
Uh, It's very difficult. Leadership is lonely. I found that throughout my career. So I ended up spending 15 years with Nordstrom, and I moved up very quickly within the company. I became a buyer when I was 26, just maybe a year after our daughter was born. And then so as a buyer, I was traveling the world for the company and also going to all the stores that we were responsible for. And then that was difficult because you'd be on the East Coast and you're trying to get bedtime for the children and say their good nights. And you're on a street corner or in a taxi, and you just like the offset on timing was very difficult. But I was really good at what I did, and I was always, um, this sponge of learning. And it was when I was a buyer that I found out that I was all my words, like all of the numbers were backwards for a lot of the time. And I knew I struggled in reading, but it wasn't until then that I was messing up on a few of my buying orders that I realized I had dyslexia. And so I went in and got tested for that and found out that it wasn't me necessarily messing up. It was the way that I saw numbers. If I wrote down a phone number, usually if I would call the number and it was the wrong number, I would just switch the numbers at the end and then I would have the right number. It was just the way that my brain had worked. And so I spent the company had a learning and development, and where while you were working, you could sign up for every class available. And so I would sign up for retail math and spreadsheets and anything that would allow me to get more focus when it came to the dyslexia. And it was through that testing that I realized my son also had that. And so we were able to, without that, I wouldn't have known the struggles he was struggling with. We're following the struggles that I had. And by 28, I became the company's youngest store manager and got my first keys to a rack store. And that's when I learned how to dig in my trash can as a leader and to focus on,
Mm.
three things that you have control over are people, product, and environment. And that was really where I learned how to dig in the trash can of leadership. But I found that leadership was really lonely. And by my third store, transitioning into the full line stores, my last store I was at was the last 4 years of my career, had 350 employees that I was responsible for and about $64 million that I was responsible for. And I was 34 at the time. And you realize that all the things that brought you joy stopped bringing you joy after a little while. And I loved what I did. I loved the people I worked for. I loved the company I worked for. But my home life was suffering. My son had gone through a lot of medical issues. And I just couldn't find the happy medium between the two. And so that joy of it really started to diminish in those last couple of years. And then I end up walking away from all of it in search of joy after our son
Mm.
had gone through a back surgery and I needed to be home for 12 weeks with him. And I did. I stepped away from my job and I stayed home with my son. And it was in those 12 weeks that I realized that life's priorities completely changed. And I couldn't quite go back and see the world the same after that time with him.
Mm. Do you think there's been an improvement to your level of joy since that experience?
For sure. Yeah. The first year I took off with my family, we traveled. We had never gone anywhere for retails. When in retail, you don't get holidays off. So we had never had a Christmas holiday off. So we went on a cruise for Christmas. We took about 3 or 4 vacations that year. We got healthy. I got into cooking and spices and all the things that can make my family healthy. And walking away, it didn't take very long to transition and realize so much that I was uh, missing out on with my kids, just that daily interaction with them when I was gone so much, or the weight of the world of leadership was on my shoulders. And so it took a little while, but then once we started traveling and really connecting as a family, and you could feel the joy just kind of pouring in, having those memories and experiences. And we did that for about a year before I knew that I needed to go back to work. And so I had found a company that I could stay here in the Northwest and still travel the world. So it was an international position, and I would be able to travel the world, but then have my home base here. And our son had about 4 years, 3 or 4 years left in high school before he graduated. So we knew we were going to be needed to be based close to Seattle. And it was my third day on the job that a box fell and hit me on the top of the head and crushed my cervical spine. And it was, the universe telling me that that wasn't the direction I guess I was supposed to go. And
Mm.
that led me on this journey of living horizontally for the last 12 years.
What do you mean living horizontally?
So, living horizontally, some people say it's bedridden. Most of my day is spent on a pillow laying flat. It's better the last 5 years, but before I would get 4 hours up total a day. The first 12 years or so of it, um, every up had a down. So I still have to space out my times up for the time that I would need to be down. This neck brace has been customed for me. And what it does is it holds the weight of my head off of the crushed cervical spine and the permanent holes and tears that are in my spinal cord. So this allows me to stay up longer, but usually it's about 2 hours now that I get, and then I'll have a down. And then I can be up a few more hours, and then I have a down. And so living horizontally is really the best way to describe pretty much spending most of your time in bed.
Mm. With the time we have left, I'd like to move into a sort of short form uh, question and answer, if we
Okay.
could. What are you most proud of yourself for?
For being here now. 4 years ago, I wouldn't have, I was planning my own death. And that's really where this journey started, was um, planning my eulogy to save pain for my family. Because the palliative care and that everything that the doctors were saying, it was just like every day was a gift, that the decline would continue to happen until I could no longer care for myself or my heart would give out. There were so many possibilities. And so I wasn't, just to be here right now in this moment, there I wasn't planning for 2024. I was hoping to get through 2020, and that it it the power of self-love, the power of divine connection, the power of intuition, the power of healing, the power of forgiveness has brought me here. I am most proud of my family and my marriage, and it's for what my children and family have gone through to be my caregivers over the last 12 years. The whole dynamic and shift of our family has happened, but the healing is also happening. As I heal, they heal. And it's been really beautiful. And then also being able to mend those relationships with all of those from my past that had hurt attached to them are now have healing attached to it.
Mm. What's something you'd still like to improve on?
Mm. Uh, I'm going to still stay with the relationships. I still think that I have such a huge family tree, and I don't have solid relationships with all of my brothers and sisters. I've kind of always been the purple or black sheep, however you look at it, going off in a different direction, leaving the religion where majority of them are still within the religion. I think that there are still some relationships, and also supporting my children through their healing process. Um, and to be here to walk the footsteps beside them as they find their own joy.
What do you think the key is to having a healthy relationship?
Listening and accepting them for who they are and where they're at, not trying to bring them on my healing journey, but showing them that I am a different person from when they knew me just a few years ago, and they're a different person, just really accepting them where they're at and loving them, but also forgiveness, listening. There's just such power in the gratitude that when you seek gratitude and you sit within gratitude, there's such a power of it, and making sure that my children know how grateful I am for them and to be a part of their journey.
Do you have moments um, where you feel badly about what's happened to you? And if so, mm, do you have like a certain practice in those moments of how to shift it or be with that?
Yeah, there used to be pity parties for one, that happened for many years. And through that, I am so grateful for actually this entire journey, the strength that it has given me to see darkness and walk through it, to follow those pops of color and to get through to see the light. Uh, when I do find myself in those moments, like why me, or I miss out on some of the things that people would do so freely or easily. Uh, there I always sit back in gratitude and color it. Like I'll color whatever that feeling is. The other day, I had a pop of color that was forest green, and it in following that color to figure out where it was in, it brought me more healing. And I could have stayed in that darkness. I could have gone down the rabbit hole of that pain that color brought forth. And But instead, I was able to change the narrative and change the color by gratitude, by understanding that every person has their own journey and I don't have to carry their burdens with me. I can forgive and let go and boomerang those gets out to them. And then just really, yeah, just coloring it. I just can't even explain how important
Mhm.
coloring your own pain and figuring out where it is in your body is really important. And gratitude.
Mhm. If you could go back in time and whisper something, let's say your 8-year-old self's ear, what would you say to her?
Uh, Keep living like it gets better. It gets so much better from that 8-year-old journey that she was in. Ooh, man, to know what she was going to have to experience in the few years that's coming before her, it would just be just to hold on. Like it does get better after that. Yeah. If I could have told my 8-year-old anything, it would be like, don't walk alone. Don't walk anywhere
Mhm.
alone. If I could have changed that for her, that's for sure.
What makes you laugh?
Uh, my godson, children. I started reading stories to children a couple years ago in 2021. It started with a little girl named Florentina who was battling cancer. And I had read her a story, and that lifted her spirit while she was going through her journey. And it started this purpose to my pillow where I just started reading every Tuesdays and Thursdays. I would read stories to her and her friends that were going through cancer. And Florentina passed away last month. So who, but to have so many great memories with her, to have so many story times. I think we clocked in over like 60 or 70 story times total with Florentina as she battled her journey. Whew. But it was that experience of being a storyteller and having all the funny character voices and wearing onesies of like sloths or unicorns just to be a kid for these children. And I still read stories. I read stories to 100 children at the Selecho Orphanage in Africa, in Zambia. And it's just been such a highlight and joy to my world. And to see children color their own pain and color their emotions and learn how to color and work with color. It's just, yeah, that brings me joy. It brings me so much laughter. It's just the little things, cats, the things that cats do. I love to laugh.
How about one tip for taking care of the body?
Whew, uh, it has to come back to water. And it really, what we are water, but water holds memory and it holds vibration, it holds frequency, it holds healing, it holds gratitude. You can infuse your water into everything. If I could give anyone a tip, would be to use water to your advantage, not only blessing what you have within, but also as you drink it in, every sip, it takes 11 seconds or 11 minutes for the first sip you take of water, scientifically proven to flow into your body. And so I would really make your sips colorful, make your sips fun, drink the rainbow, but to really intentionally use your water in healing is it's so powerful. And you can't cry when you sip in water. And so before this journey, now I allow the tears to flow. But before, I would have grabbed my straw and I would sipped in every time I would start to cry because your body stops, the tears don't flow when you're sipping something in. And that was kind of it was my hack all of these years and until this journey really started. And now I release the sips to allow the energy to flow. But yeah, water, gratitude, self-love. Oh, there's so much.
Hmm. Okay, final question. What do you hope the future has in store for you?
Who uh to be a teacher for others on their own healing journey. I want this forgiveness frequency. It's currently available free to everyone who wants to take a part in it. But I want to be able to give this back to the world in a way that anyone and everyone can tap into their own forgiveness frequency to have these powwows with God and to be wrapped in this hug that's healing, that's universally guided. Everything kind of comes in an acronym. But yeah, I want this healing journey to happen for everyone and to have this available in multiple languages. I see it just traversing the world and wrapping the world in a hug. So that's really where I foresee this next few years happening. And these are all guided stories and guided, channeled conversations with God that are hopefully can help another.
Hmm. Wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Hugs heal, 60-second hugs. If you are looking for a connection with your child or your husband or spouse, or you're so far apart you just don't know where to start with a hug. And I guarantee you there's just a magical energy that comes with it. So yeah, I would leave everyone with a hug. Sending out waves of love and ripples of gratitude to Avi Gordan for gifting me this session to experience the Life Chronicles and have a few chapters of my story told. If you would like to have your story preserved and your legacy told, check out lifechronicles.com.